Hello, and welcome to the Why We See Movies podcast. I'm your host, Ron Houghton. Joining me today, we've got Paul.
Hello.
And Darren.
Yep.
We don't have a feature review today. Instead, we're going to be doing a bit of a movie roundup. But first, let's start with what's going on in the entertainment world with...
You on the mark!
First news. Did you know that Luke Cage broke Netflix?
Yeah, it was down for like 2 hours.
Isn't that crazy? Hey?
Yeah.
We're taking a character who probably nobody had ever heard of a year ago, and now he's breaking down Netflix.
Yeah.
It's crazy how
popular
hyped people
they
are
become.
for this stuff.
Yeah, I think they've branded themselves very well.
That's for sure.
Shows the impatience of people, too.
Yeah.
You can watch it in a week, and it'll still be on there.
I will say I watched the first bit of the episode at 12:02. I was checking it at 11, hoping I could check it out then, but it was like, oh, I realized BC, right? We need that hour gap. So I watched the first episode within the first hour it was released. Thankfully, it didn't break down in Canada. I think it was just the United States and bits of Europe or something. I don't know.
I'm not even sure. I just heard it was down for 2 hours.
Anyways, I thought that was crazy. And have you started that, or Luke Cage?
Yeah, we got the first episode watched on the Saturday, and I think as of last night, I think we're 7 episodes in.
Yeah, I'm probably exactly the same place. And what do you think of it so far?
Love the feel. I love the fact that each Netflix show has its own identity. It's definitely got its own feel. Like right from the get-go, it's got that kind of warm funk vibe that's very musical driven, which I guess you could kind of expect.
Great music.
But yeah, fantastic. And yeah, I just like that it's definitely got its own distinct vibe and different sensibilities about it, like the neighborhood itself, like Harlem is a character itself. And I guess not that Hell's Kitchen isn't, but yeah, I think it's definitely got a different vibe, and it's great that it's different. You're not just watching cookie cutter things, which the movies get criticized of being kind of not necessarily cookie cutter but formulaic. And I don't think the shows are.
Yeah, it's taking some political stances. It's definitely about Black America, talking about race and bringing up things like this. It's no surprise that touting a black guy with bulletproof skin is a pretty popular idea these days.
Yeah.
And, I think it works great. You saw Jessica Jones, right? The introduction of the character.
Yeah.
I wasn't sold on how they were kind of bringing him out in that show. I don't know if he was that necessary to it, but he's definitely... I love Mike Coulter in this show. Yes. I think he's a terrific choice for it. If I had a criticism about it, and it's probably the same thing that I had with Jessica Jones, it's the structuring of it. I like my origin stories. I can't believe that I'm 7 episodes in, and we don't really know anything about his backstory still, about where he's come from.
Little glimpses here or there, but you don't know everything yet.
Right. That would be no problem if they had enough plot to sustain that for the first few episodes, but just like Jessica Jones, these guys are really stretching their plot thin. They could probably do it in 10, right? Agree. And if you cut a lot of the fat out, I think the show would be leaner and meaner. And
it's funny because people criticize Daredevil too, but I never felt like I wanted Daredevil any shorter than it was. But I'd agree, Jessica Jones, there was a couple opportunities I thought, nope, you could have resolved it here, you could have ended it here, and not that I didn't enjoy it, but it just felt a little more drawn out.
Yeah, it could be cut down a bit, but still, I'm glad a Luke Cage exists.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I'm happy to live in that world for 13 episodes.
It's definitely in the Jessica Jones Daredevil world, and it's getting me really excited about these Defenders.
And I absolutely love the little throwaway comments or buy a video of the incident.
Right.
Just the little things that you don't have to be so obvious about it, and it just lets you know that, okay, this is street level Marvel. There is a bigger world out there that they're not going to show, but it's that nod that, that exists, and they are in that same world.
And that general consensus that people are getting that super beings exist in this world.
And does this show take place modern time or
modern time? It's funny you say that because Quentin Tarantino came out and said he would have preferred a 70s Luke Cage.
Me too, but I can understand why they did it.
You want to cross over for franchise purposes.
Yeah. But I do love the fact that in this show, and I don't really think this is a spoiler, but they do, maybe out of the 3 Netflix shows that have been released so far, this one is probably closer to an Avengers in the fact that he has the bulletproof skin, whereas Jessica Jones, she's strong, but it's not like she's the Hulk, and Daredevil Daredevil, he's got heightened senses, but it's a lot more martial arts based, whereas Luke Cage is bulletproof and he's strong, and they do even make mention of the fact that he's kind of like the Black Captain America or whatever. So maybe a little more super feel to it in the superhero, I guess.
I think that could be also one of the, not really a big problem with it. I find that the action sequences in it, we're getting a little kind of boring after a while, because how many times can you...
threat.
Right, there isn't threat. He's bulletproof, and you're just watching him, walk through rooms and take people out.
Like reading a Superman comic, you're not invested because where's the threat? And I think that's why I'm probably more invested in a Daredevil, because there is that threat, and he does get his ass kicked. And sure, the whole 13 episodes are based on him, but you don't know what condition he's going to be in when he comes out of the fight.
So bulletproof.
Yeah.
But if you punch him, it might hurt.
Nope.
Just so I understand the character.
He's really strong.
So he's always
invulnerable.
He's just got a very, very thick skin, and it's funny that I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil anything. There's characters that say like, okay, he's bulletproof, but can he swim? Basically.
Right.
Like,
have you tried to drown him?
Exactly.
Okay, so vulnerabilities might come up. Okay.
There's lots of things that you could try with.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing the end of it, and
me too.
We can talk about it maybe later when we've all caught up with it. I'm sure Ivan will have some ideas about it.
And I think the performances are generally good. And
across the board, great.
I had read an article recently about a lot of Marvel music and more of the cinematic music being very forgettable, and how many themes do you really remember from the cinematic universe? And
most of the scores to the movies bite.
Yeah, well, and I think they're that way on purpose, right? Like, they don't want you...
It's just modern filmmaking, right?
Yeah.
Just scores are pretty generic these days.
We could do a whole thing on that.
The fact that, let me just say, that Alan Silvestri has been signed on to the next 2 Avengers movies is great news.
Oh, that is good.
Yeah, he did Captain America and the first Avengers, and even Danny Elfman's contributions to Age of Ultron were kind of last minute, and he couldn't quite save it musically. But
it's funny you say that, because the Avengers theme is one of the more memorable pieces of music from their cinematic ventures. I just find it funny that there's that criticism out there, and then this show gets released that's very music centric, and it the music is definitely...
I love the funk film scores of the 70s. So
but it's not just that. It's got like a lot of Nina Simone and John Lee Hooker and a lot of blues music. A lot of the first few episodes take place in a barbershop, and they really get the feel for that.
Great.
It's just it's...
And I love that they just kind of drop you into that world. Like, the series opens up with people, like, it's a believable world. It's not like, hey, did you see Captain America did this? No, they're talking about basketball and why do you like this coach better than that coach? Like, a real conversation that you can imagine happening. And yeah, like I said, it seems, maybe out of all of the shows, it seems the most lived in portrayal of that universe so far, maybe.
I would say so too. Okay, one thing, segueing from that, did you hear that John Bernthal is getting his own Punisher series?
Yeah. So clearly they've liked his performance, and
I think everybody liked his performance.
So he's obviously going to be part of the Defenders now, I'm guessing.
I don't know how they're going to sandwich him in, or how much of a story they'd locked down for already that Defenders. I think that they haven't really, even in all 3 shows so far, we haven't really got the idea of this general threat that's going to, there's no Thanos still lurking. They're going to have to handle. So who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I knew they were filming. I didn't realize they were fast-tracking it so much, though.
Yeah, glad that Punisher's going to be a part of it.
He seems like a good actor for the role.
Yeah, he's terrific. You really got to check out Daredevil. You're going to love it.
Yeah, soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Both seasons were fantastic.
My favorite superhero TV show of all time.
Yep.
Okay. What's next? Oh, for Dex, I got a few questions to ask you. Magnificent Seven has come out. Came out really strong. Mm-hmm. Reviews have been mixed. One thing that I know that most people who didn't care much for it is, and were fans of the original, just like me.
Well, as you probably know already, a good friend of ours went to see the movie specifically to hear the score on the big screen. Oh, no. And to his surprise, it does not feature any Elmer Bernstein music.
And I was shocked to hear that. And then I started thinking, well, of course not, because they can't just use Elmer Bernstein's score, because his score was made for a different film. So they need a different composer for this film, and of course he's going to have to bring his own thing to it.
You prefer not to have to reference older themes written by someone else if you don't
Or would it be be this great homage that, oh my God, I would love to get my hands on Elmer Bernstein's score and adapt it and mix it and, bring it to life somehow in a new era. But obviously, they've ditched that idea.
Yeah, I don't know whose decision it was, if there was even a decision to be made. I mean, it's like Man of Steel. I'm pretty sure that Zack Snyder didn't want anything to do with referencing Christopher Reeve or that era or sound, and therefore there was no question.
But that might have also been a direct counter to Bryan Singer's film where he wanted to completely separate himself from that as well.
But most composers, and look at the Harry Potter series, you have the first 3 movies scored by arguably the greatest film composer that's ever lived.
Who's he again?
Jason
Bourne,
Williamson, or something like that. And then for each composer that worked on one of the sequels, you're faced with a mix of, okay, you have to reference some of the classic John Williams themes in the franchise, and then try to contribute your own that is also try to be as memorable as those themes.
Which you're not going to do.
Yeah, it's tough. So when it comes to something like this, a reimagining, reworking of an older classic film, you probably want to come up with your own original material and not want anything to do with the original classic Bernstein score. My guess is the composers, and director Antoine Fuqua, probably neither one of them wanted to do anything in terms of referencing Elmer Bernstein's score. What is interesting is this is the last film that will carry a music by James Horner credit on it. Of course, he had written some themes for it before the picture was finished and died in its tragic plane crash. And I can't remember the name of the composer who came on board, but he used he used James Horner's themes as he wrote the score to this film, so it's kind of a collaboration in that way. But
and have you heard the new score?
I haven't heard any of it.
What was I going to say? Oh, do you remember the Psycho remake from a few years ago?
Yeah.
That Gus Van Sant did? Did that use any of the original Bernard Herrmann?
It was, Danny Elfman pretty much directly adapted Bernard Herrmann's score.
So so we're talking about 2 completely different ideas.
Different approaches,
older material. Yeah, to me, it seems like such a no-brainer to use something that's already there, that people know, that if you blasted that score at the beginning, people, I'm sure that they would already be on your side.
Depends. I haven't seen this film, but my guess is it just has a completely different tone from the original. And does that kind of joyous, uplifting Elmer Bernstein theme, is it appropriate in this film? I don't know. I haven't seen it, but my guess is the approach of the director is as different as the approach of the composer in this case.
Okay. I can't wait for us all to see that. Not in the theaters, it looks like.
Nope.
So maybe around Christmas time.
It was in for a magnificent 7 days.
Other news I want to talk about, HBO has said that they are open to a Game of Thrones prequel series. Of course, this wouldn't have creative talents of Weiss and Benioff, who said they're done. I think they put their time in. Maybe they would stay on as executive producers, they said. What do you guys think of this?
It could be interesting.
The books has the entire... several backstories. It's a fully developed world.
Right. I did want to say that George R. R. Martin has said he's fine with it. And, he says if they want to, there are thousands and thousands of pages of stuff to go back to.
And apparently they skip over a lot of stuff, too. I haven't personally read the books, but my wife has, and so we watch it. And just hearing her say, wow, they just cut out this side story completely, I think there's enough material
in the current tense.
Right. And so I'm assuming that they could develop even that.
The best thing is the War of the Usurper that led Robert Baratheon to power. It would be the best idea for a prequel.
Right, that's the one that we know the most about.
Yeah.
That has to do with the Mad King dying.
Yeah. Exactly.
But then you're talking about using younger versions of characters we've already seen.
Yeah.
So would you just not rather do something completely separate?
Or how far back do they want to go?
Yeah.
I was almost thinking it was going to be like
in Westeros. So.
There is, but if you've read The Lord of the Rings and you've read The Silmarillion, you could understand that one could be adapted into narrative entertainment, and something like The Silmarillion, which is more like a textbook, really is almost impossible.
No, the stories are developed pretty well.
Oh, is that right?
For instance, the War of the Usurper. And I'm sure George R. R. Martin has binders and binders of notes on them that you could easily develop these into a prequel series.
And I'm sure if Westworld doesn't take off like HBO needs it to, they'll be really thinking about it seriously. Once their flagship show goes.
They need something.
They sure do.
What's happened with all the talk that they were talking about possibly doing a Game of Thrones movie at some point too, like theatrical release?
As a kind of summation to the series?
Or something like that. Like, it would definitely be present tense, But they were talking about that. I think it was earlier this year. They were talking about that possibility.
I didn't hear any of that either. Yeah, all I know is George R. R. Martin never wanted to sell the rights to the books as a feature because he just said there's no way this can be done as a movie. So
I don't know if maybe they were thinking one of the side stories that they kind of glossed over in the show that they could develop that into like more of a theatrical release. I don't know.
There's a lot of stories and so on that happen in this universe, so there's a potential.
Okay, that's the Game of Thrones prequel series. Last bit of news, I just wanted to mention I would be remiss not to talk about the passing of the late, great Gene Wilder. I don't know what you guys thought of Gene Wilder. I thought he was fantastic. I grew up with him from him and his Richard Pryor movies and the Mel Brooks films. Okay, we're back. Technical difficulties. So we're all sad about Gene Wilder. That was, we had to stop. Paul started crying for a little while, and Darren was pulled up.
Dexter consoled me. That was the technical difficulties. We needed a little blue pill.
Yeah. We're all good now.
I haven't seen a ton of Gene Wilder, actually. And I have not seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory as one of his most iconic roles. The one thing about Gene Wilder that I will always remember and quote is in Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask. And he's the psychiatrist, if you guys don't mind sitting through a little story here about the movie. And
how old were you when you saw this?
I borrowed it from you.
Oh, okay.
So it was not...
So right.
I was
like
an adult.
A teenage boy. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I was watching this, and so in comes his patient, Mr. Milosh. And Mr. Milosh has his sheep with him. And Mr. Milosh is just pouring his heart out and going on about how he's in love with his sheep and he wants to marry his sheep. And, forget about his wife. Like, it's over. Like, it's me and my sheep have found true love, and et cetera, et cetera. And Gene Wilder's delivery of the line, Mr. Milosh, you're crazy. It's just so perfect in every way. And I had to pause the movie because I couldn't stop laughing. That's my Gene Wilder story.
And I can't think of any other actor who could have played that role, sitting in that bed in love with his sheep. Wow. I mean, it's just, he had such an innocence, naivety to him. I just think we're not going to see that again. He was just kind of a one of a kind.
And I agree. Like, for me, much like you, Ron, I saw so many of his comedies when I was a kid with Richard Pryor, like Hear No Evil, See No Evil. And I'm sure it's an awful movie, but man, I remember laughing my heart out when I was like,
Did you ever see Stir Crazy?
Oh, yeah.
Right,
yeah,
Busting Out, that one I fell in love with. Young Frankenstein. I watched
Which I've actually never seen.
Really, he's fantastic in that.
Yeah.
He has a great little bit part in Bonnie and Clyde. His first screen work.
I don't remember that.
And you've seen The Producers, you guys?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nope.
His classic skit where he's
there was a couple lines in The Producers. I can't even remember now. But
when he's hysterical, in pain, and then wet, and I'm still hysterical.
That a few times too because I couldn't stop laughing. The Producers is very good.
Very engaging on kind of an everyman level, right? Like, didn't have superstar Hollywood looks or whatever, but was just good at what he did and very, I guess, approachable and engaging. Just engaging as performances spoke for themselves.
Yeah, he made me smile without saying a word on screen. I just
absolutely
adored him.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to the movie roundup. Anybody want to start off with something? Something you're excited about?
I saw Hell or High Water last week, and it's a good movie. It's the 98% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Man, it had me excited because I love it.
98.
I think it's a 98.
Wow, that's insane.
I love a great thriller. Yeah, like the greatest movie ever made. Really, a rating like that. I'd put it mid 70s somewhere. I mean, it's good, but as a heist / bank robbery thriller, it's as cliched as anything. It's right from 10 minutes into the movie, who's going to live, who's going to die, how the heist is going to play out, how all the robberies are going to play out. Who's in charge and who did what. And what's great about it is the writing. It's got a fantastic script, not in terms of the story, but the dialogue and the cast. The cast are perfect for the role, and they're all given the perfect lines.
And who's all in it?
So Jeff Bridges, Chris Pine, and
Ben Whitlaw. Is that his name?
Yeah,
right.
Wishaw, something like that. Can't remember his name, but yeah, it's Chris Pine's brother. And then a great character actor whose name I did not bother remembering, playing Jeff Bridges' partner. And every one of them is the smartest guy in his bubble. The Ben Wishaw, whoever he is, his character, he's between the two brothers. He's the dope, he's the dummy, He's the guy who's in and out of prison. But when he gets back in prison every time, he's running the cell block. Like, he's just smarter than all the other cons. He says the right thing at the right time. And he might not be a genius, but he knows how to handle every situation he's in. And Chris Pine is the quiet, thoughtful brother. It's kind of a cliche character, but he delivers every line that he has so well. And he's just in control of the whole situation right from the start. He knows right where he wants to go with everything. Jeff Bridges, you don't get a better old grizzled guy in the movies these days. He's really made that type of role his own in the last few years. And he's just got a bunch of great lines, racist lines to his partner that aren't even appropriate. Like, he doesn't even get the correct race of his partner sometimes, but he doesn't care. And then just the partner is just the quiet, stoic partner, just putting up with the insults and the racism because he knows they're deep down they're best friends, and it's all just a show. And yeah, enough good things can't be said about the cast and the dialogue. I just wish they were in a stronger thriller. I recommend the movie. It's a good movie.
Just to correct, it's Ben Foster.
Ben Foster.
Yeah.
Ben Whishaw, isn't he like the new Spider-Man or something?
There's a few Bens out there
Ender
floating around these days. Is it going to be around your top 10 for the year?
No,
nothing that great.
It's a strong movie. Don't see it in the theater.
I think we missed our chance anyways. But,
Probably.
I do look forward to seeing it eventually. Paul, what do you have for us today?
I went and saw Kubo and the Two Strings. Highly recommend it. Hesitate to say I loved it. There were elements of it I absolutely loved. Story-wise, probably is its failing, is it's kind of...
And the basic plot being?
This young boy and his mother trying to make their way a quest, kind of in some ways to protect their village, kind of like a Magnificent Seven. It's very heartwarming, extremely imaginative. Like, the animation and the visuals are incredible. Loved it, and extremely effective use of music. That's really well done. The animation itself, it's kind of along the lines of Coraline, same studio, where it's got a lot of very real stop motion animation, and then they just kind of accent that a little bit with some CGI, but it doesn't take away from it, in my opinion.
I didn't know it was mostly stop motion. I just assumed it was computer animated.
Yeah, no, it's stop motion just accented by CGI, which I love because it has its own look. It's not like these animated features that you see constantly being churned out and they all kind of look the same.
Yeah.
Story-wise, it's just pretty simple and by the numbers, and kind of reveals along the way just developments with character that I think ultimately it's a kid's movie, so as an adult you can kind of figure out what the plot turns are going to be or whatever, maybe quicker than a kid, but it doesn't suffer for that. I would say that's the only reason I wouldn't say I loved it, is just, the plot's just okay. Mm-hmm. But if you just want to go on a really imaginative ride and be thoroughly entertained, give it a watch. I really enjoyed it.
Did you see it in 3D?
Thankfully, no. I didn't. I could see where there would be... Actually, no. I did see it in 3D because that was the only showing. I'm wrong.
It's a memorable 3D then.
Well, the more I think of it, because I saw it...
I've heard the 3D is actually pretty good at this.
Yeah, the 3D is actually really good. Like, what they do, now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, was pretty effective. It's not like some of those cartoon 3Ds where they try to almost do too much. They did just certain elements of the 3D. No, it's really good. Like I said, it's very enjoyable. I would recommend it to everybody, adult or kid alike. I would say definitely better than 98% of the animation being churned out there now. Like, it actually encourages kids
better than Madagascar 3.
And I haven't seen Finding Dory, but I would say probably a little more imaginative than that. I've just been a little underwhelmed by Pixar the last little bit. A lot of people loved Inside Out. I thought it was okay. Their last one, I'm trying to remember what the last big one they did.
Good Dinosaur.
Oh yeah, The Good Dinosaur.
That
was very forgettable. And this is heads and tails above that. It's encouraging to me to see smaller studios like this actually getting bigger releases and hopefully pushing some of the bigger studios that are maybe just kind of like, we'll just put out another one. Because, Pixar used to be the benchmark, and sure, they still make a ton of money, but they're nowhere near as must-see as they once were. I don't feel they are, and I love animation. I loved Coraline. So and this was a great addition.
Yeah, I think it's proving that there's an audience for some darker animated fare out there.
Yeah, I thoroughly recommend it.
All right, Kubo and Two Strings. I look forward to seeing that too. Okay, I caught up with the film. I've been wanting to see it for a long time. It was on TCM a few weeks ago. Have you guys ever heard of a film called Roar?
Roar, yeah.
Roar.
Wow, I wish they knew it was on. I would have recorded it.
I should have told you about it. I'm sorry. Have you, Paul?
It sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you what it's...
Okay, it's written and directed by this man, Noel Marshall. It came out in 1981. Eventually came out in 1981. I'll start with the synopsis. Ravening jungle beasts assemble in flocks to invade an otherwise quiet home where they terrorize the visiting family of their keeper. Okay, that's the boring description. Let's get to the ad line, which is far more interesting. No animals were harmed during the making of this film, although 70 cast and crew members were. It has been called one of the most irresponsible shoots of all time. It's infamous in film circles for how they got away with this. Basically, Noel Marshall, who was film producer in the 70s, and his wife Tippi Hedren, who you know from Hitchcock films like The Birds and Marnie, had gone to Africa on safari, fell in love with lions. The movie Born Free had come out, was a huge success, and they thought, okay, let's make a movie about animals because we love them so much. Immediately they were told if they want to do this, it's probably best to raise your own cubs and get a familiarity with them so you can train them properly and make a film with them. So the process of this took many years. They
Sounds like great advice. Just
absolutely.
The average producer and actress just raising their own lions.
Why not? This is mid-70s, probably a lot of hippie communes going around. We'll just create our own with lions. So they,
as you do.
So they embarked on this crazy thing and started shooting with a bare bones plot. Also, Tippi Hedren's 13-year-old daughter, Melanie Griffith, is in the film. And because they couldn't really hire real actors to come to this because it was so dangerous, he just decided to use his family. His own kids, friends, a lot of amateur acting in this. And basically over the course of about 4 years, scavenging shots here and there, they created this movie. It's not good, but it's hypnotically watchable just for the fact that you're going to be seeing something you've never seen before. I mean, we're not talking 2 or 3 lions. We're talking dozens of lions, tigers, black panthers running around. It's insane. It's the Jungle Book on steroids, and you can't believe that, that they actually did this. Let's just get to some of the injuries. One of the cameramen was mauled, requiring 176 stitches. Melanie Griffith needed plastic surgery. She had almost an eye taken out. Tippi Hedren was mauled several times, requiring hundreds of combined stitches. It's ridiculous that they tried to do this. It wasn't successful. It bankrupted them. It destroyed their marriage. But all in all, it's worth seeing.
Didn't it take a long time to even get a release before?
Absolutely. The shooting alone, Melanie Griffith, the whole movie takes place over the course of about 48 hours, and Melanie Griffith ages 4 years. You can actually see her growing up. It's hilarious.
She didn't have breasts before.
They had problems with some flooding. They shut down for a few years. Well, the cinematographer that was mauled was Jan de Bont.
Oh, really?
It was his first American film. He was the guy who later would direct Speed and some other movies.
Cinematographer on Die Hard.
Absolutely. Great cinematographer.
Yeah.
What the hell he thought he was doing getting involved with this. Probably maybe for the challenge of doing it. But
this is my ticket to Hollywood.
I don't know what else to say about it except for the fact that it's I've never seen anything like it. You would think Tippi Hedren would have learned something from The Birds, making a movie with animals, that it doesn't go well. But check it out. If you ever have a chance to see it, you will never see anything like it. Believe me.
Would you ever rewatch it?
No. I haven't deleted it from TCM yet, from my recording, because I might want to look at some of the shots. And the more research you do on it, you can find out exactly when people were injured. Most of the injuries are on screen, if you want to find it. I might take a look at it just in a morbid curiosity for that. But there's no plot to it whatsoever. There's nothing happening. Except for people running around being chased by animals. By lions here and jungles there and panthers there. And it's insanity. Run amok. That is Roar from 1981. Dex, what else do you got for us?
Don't really have much else new that I've watched. I'll say I've recently completed a couple of landmark TV series, each in their own way, from late 50s, early 60s, the original Twilight Zone. Great show, man. I will never rewatch the whole series, I don't think, but there's about 25, 30 just classic sci-fi episodes that, from The Invaders to Eye of the Beholder to, I think it's called Little Girl Lost, just so many great episodes. Obviously, I can see why.
The Invaders, that's the one with the little men attacking. That scared the hell out of me when I was a child when I watched that.
So good. And just one of the great twists of any episode. It was fantastic. And so much good music and Rod Serling's classic introductions and lead-ins and lead-outs.
Smoking.
Puffing away on his cigarettes. Yeah, I mean, the original Twilight Zone, it's fantastic. And then, perhaps on the opposite side of the spectrum, Downton Abbey, recently finished that.
I always watch those two at the same time. Downton Abbey, Twilight Zone.
A good doubleheader.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of another TV series where it felt like I'm spending the evening with my friends just by watching it. Just, oh, what's Carson up to tonight? And, oh, you know, Mary, and I don't know. It's a show that just gives you such a good feeling watching it. And I was...
Not necessarily filled with endearing people.
No, I mean, it's got
its share of bastards.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very hesitant to watch this show, despite good friends who I trust recommending it, despite all the great critical reviews. I just kept thinking, I'm going to be watching a bunch of British snobs drinking tea.
Anytime a show is really popular with your parents or even grandparents, yeah, you could be a little trepidatious and be like...
But man, Maggie Smith, I mean, just one of the all-time great television characters. And yeah, there's plenty of pricks in this show and just great conflicts. Just wonderful writing. Every episode script is just perfect. Wonderful. The perfect cast for the show, great characters, and a wonderful examination of time and place and a specific historical era. Obviously, the show focuses on the decline of the aristocracy post-World War I in England. And then there's all these other little bits thrown in there. Like there's a little bit about the brown shirts in Germany, and there's a little bit about, well, there's a great episode that just skewers Chamberlain in just the most magnificent way. And, you know, little references to the Titanic at the beginning of the series, and then pretty much a whole season dedicated to World War I. And it's just, I think it's maybe one of my 10 favorite TV shows of all time.
Right. With the Titanic, that's 1912, right? 12, so the show encompasses what, maybe about 12 years?
12 years.
Yeah, it goes up until about the early to mid-20s, so over 6 seasons.
Would you have wanted another season?
This is one of the few shows where I could say, all said and done, and I'm satisfied, but a reunion show down the road, a TV movie,
which
something
you're talking about,
would be, it would just be great to, oh man, like I just want to see these guys again because I love them so much. I mean, I loved Lost. I don't need to see any more Lost. I loved Seinfeld. Ended perfectly. I don't need to see any more Seinfeld. Not in the same way, but with Downton Abbey, I think part of it being they covered history so well. Like, let's see what's going on in the 1930s with the characters of Downton. Like, let's see what they're up to with the backdrop of even a greater rise in fascism or whatever happening in Europe at the time.
And I think they each portray their characters so well that you're right. Like, it feels like you're spending time with real people, with real friends. Yeah. Where, it almost feels voyeuristic at times. Where you could very much say, like, okay, this is where season 6 ends. Like you said, I want to see where these characters are in 10 years.
And the greatest heroes of the show piss you off. They do something at some point. They're like, why did you do that? And the biggest jerks have you just rooting for them by the end of the show. So
the shifting that you go back with, and I'm going to forget all the characters' names, but the guy downstairs,
Carson,
the homosexual,
Thomas.
Oh, Thomas.
Yeah. The shifts that you take with that character, between not liking him and liking him, he does such a masterful job at that.
Like, how dare they make me almost cry for Thomas?
Right.
Yes.
And yet they do. You see him post World War I getting into the black market and just getting his ass handed to him. You think, you deserve that, you bastard. And then by the end of the series, you want nothing but good things for him.
Yeah.
It's just, masterful writing on the show.
And I think you're right. It's really interesting to watch the progression of human history through the show where, it opens up with the newspaper headline, the Titanic sinking, but then you see the introduction of electricity and the mistrust that people had with that.
Every invention that comes downstairs.
Telephones,
exactly.
blenders, electric blenders.
And the hair, the electric hair curlers and everything where... we kind of take that for granted, but it's very true, like how mistrustful you would be of certain things like that. And I thought they handled it brilliantly.
Yeah.
And realistically, I could totally buy the way that they were reacting to these
phonographs
things.
And
how much of a honor it was to be able to answer the house telephone at the time where, now everybody pretty much has a telephone in their pocket, right? And it's just that progression of human history. I thought they handled everything brilliantly. And then even to go back to Tom, or not Tom, but the guy, the bastard servant.
Thomas.
Was it Thomas?
There's Thomas, and then there was Tom.
Tom was the chauffeur. Okay, yeah. Thomas, where he's homosexual, which is such a huge thing in those days, and the reaction, and I thought they handled that very well too, where people were reacting to it in a very realistic manner, but it wasn't a big deal either, right? Like, it's not like, oh, this is, something that we could gain viewers from just by having a gay butler.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
they never lose the humanity of the characters in the show.
Yeah, they didn't try to make him heroic and stand up for gay rights at the time or anything like that. He was kind of a dickhead.
And struggling with everything. Yeah, it was a brilliant show.
And always kept you guessing, too.
Yep.
It was always ahead of me in plot. I could never guess where it was going to be going, and usually when I guessed, I was wrong.
Yeah, and I was glad through the progression of the series they got away from the gut punch season finales. As far as, like, the first couple when certain characters died or whatever, the last couple, they kind of left off a little more hopeful.
Yeah, you could tell with season 5 they were leading into what they knew was going to be their final season, and they were building the characters for everyone to have a nice finish. And
right. And enough bloody tragedy already.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've heard people complain about the way the series ended, and I don't know what their complaints were.
No.
Because it just seemed like they gave every character their due, gave everyone...
Needed something.
Yeah, gave everyone a chance to, find some modicum of happiness. And I don't know, I can't imagine a more satisfying conclusion for the show than what we got.
Right. Every character had a lot of dignity. Like, there was a lot of strong women in there.
Yeah.
Which is very good to see that it's like, that may not have been prevalent in those days, but yeah, very much like a lot of strong women, like you said, Maggie Smith, the way she just commands attention.
Oh, she's just brilliant.
Such an amazing
my
depiction.
one complaint about the series would be the characters of Bates and Anna, who after season of being the tragic characters that everything bad happens to them and all the bad luck and such sad sacks, I didn't care by the end. You know what? Like, just get on with it. Let them finally get some peace, and it became too much for them. It was, I don't know, they just became the go-to characters for tragedy. Yeah. But small criticism on the overall wonderful series.
I loved him. Yeah. Their relationship is maybe one of my favorite things. I loved him in the first 3 seasons,
but by the end of it, I kind of didn't even care when he was on screen anymore, because I was just tired of all his sad happenings. And it became a little one note after a while.
Downton Abbey. And the Twilight Zone, for all you kids out there.
Watch them all.
Yeah.
Twilight Abbey.
All right.
One TV right beside the other.
Paul, do you have anything else?
Kind of going with Dex as far as two TV shows that are very different sensibilities and tones. I finally got into Luther with Idris Elba. Just finished season 2, which thankfully they're really short seasons. Like season 1, 6 episodes. Season 2 is 4, so it doesn't take long to zip through it. So it's good. He's a very likable character and definitely commands screen presence when he's on there. I find it sometimes it's a little cliched in the resolution of certain cases. Like
he's playing a detective?
Yeah, he's like the main detective in a London crime unit. So, and the supporting characters are really good and everything. They're just sometimes I think the show thinks it's smarter than it is or whatever, or maybe it's just the fact that through movies and TV you've seen so many crime plots or whatever that sometimes they use your typical trappings of, well, let's just get the bad guy that you can't catch to say something, but you're recording what they're saying on your cell phone kind of thing. And I'm like, well, for a guy that's supposed to be brilliant and smart, that seems like such an average way to resolve a case. So sometimes there's a little bit of that, but overall it's really enjoyable. I'd say definitely check it out.
Is it more episodic, or is it each season has its own overarching story?
Season 2 had a little bit more of an overarching plot line. Season 1 had an it's definitely each episode has its own case that it's resolving, but each season has its own definitive story arc, and thankfully they're not that long. Kind of like what we were saying with Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, where it's like, oh, well, they're trying to stretch 8 or 10 episodes into 13. It's very concise storytelling because they've only got 6 and 4 episodes to kind of resolve what's going on. So there's not really any of that stretching of story. So it's good, and I really am enjoying it. I would not say it's on the level of Sherlock, which somebody had said that it was going into it, which is one of my favorite shows.
You can't get higher praise than that.
No. So, and maybe that was a failing going into it, as my expectations were set too high.
There are a few shows that are going to be as good as Sherlock.
I agree, but definitely worth checking out. It is a very enjoyable watch, and I think one of the best things about it is that it won't take you long to get caught up in. I've only been watching it for 2 weeks.
If I can break the round table and not let you have your turn around and just throw in, since kind of talking about crime show and so on, just 4 episodes into, halfway through The Night of, HBO's, and like, man, is that just the perfect way to cover one case in an 8-episode run. And I mean,
You're not done yet.
I'm not done yet. I'm halfway in, but man, just every character, from the cop, the detective investigating it, to the suspect, to the district attorney, to the defense attorney, everyone's perfect. And just, there hasn't been anything dumb yet where I could say, like, you know, I've got my cell phone and I'm clandestinely recording what he's saying. Just everything is just so smart and realistic. And it's from Steven Zalian, of course, so writer of Schindler's List, amongst many other great films as a writer and director.
And Richard Price, too, is a screenwriter on it.
Yeah.
He
You
wrote,
know, I
like,
need to look him
25th
up.
Hour and Clockers.
25th Hour?
And Clockers.
Oh, wow, I love the 25th Hour.
He definitely has a...
Yeah.
Do you know this show, Paul? The Night of?
I think you mentioned it one of the last times we got together, and you were raving about it.
Basically,
I think it just rounded up.
It's on HBO. It's an 8-episode. It involves a young... Is he Iranian?
He is
descent? Pakistani descent of this young kid who has a very bad night and is eventually implicated in a murder of this woman that he had met that night. And
we still don't know how she died, so halfway into it, he might be guilty. It's just, we don't know. He may or may not be. He's the typical, you know, Hitchcockian seeming innocent man thrown into a situation that he can't quite control, but we don't know that he's innocent at this stage. We just suspect that he's innocent.
And I don't know if you've got the feel of it yet, but it kind of, the two stories is the criminal story and the trial. Like, one, did he do it? You know, and 2, how does a guy like this, a young kid, if you're innocent,
get into that situation?
How do you survive in the interim between when you're put away in jail and you're waiting for your trial and you're in, you know,
the scenes
one of the hardest
Rikers.
Incarcerated places in the world, like, for a good year. How does a young kid survive like that while he's waiting to prove his innocence, if he is innocent, and what that does to you?
It kind of sounds like the Serial podcast in some ways, like that first season where they had a young man of, I can't remember.
I almost just called him Adnan, so I totally agree with what you're saying.
But yeah, there's certainly parallels to be drawn as far as similarities in the case. Not having seen it, but yeah, just a description, it sounds like some similar.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when you finish it, and we can do a full spoiler show on it. But
no spoilers really right now.
No. That's The Night of. Lots of TV. I'll get back to the movies. I just caught up with something on TV that I was not willing to see in the theater. This was the movie Gods of Egypt.
Oh, man.
And
I can't even imagine.
Okay, first off, it's directed by Alex Proyas. I've seen all of his films, and since Dark City, I am sold on this guy. I will watch anything he does, no matter how ridiculous. I was so hoping that this was going to be, you know, so bad it's good.
But it's just bad.
It's just bad. Do you guys know anything about the plot of this? Did you guys pay any attention to the advertising?
And that was enough for me to...
And it was what? Just the general look of it?
I thought it looked interesting, but just the general whatever reveals, and it just looked like one idea on steroids.
Basically the premise that real gods ran Egypt at a time. Ra was a real god. Horus was a real god. The Egyptian trusted these people to run their lives, and it's kind of a battle between the two brothers, Horus and Set, trying to take over ruling in Egypt at the time, and how a mortal Bek gets involved in all of this. The acting's terrible, plot's terrible, and the special effects in this movie, it's almost like they did a screening and the cards came back that were so bad. Like, you know how they do test screenings with unfinished effects, and, you know, they'll say, you know, well, we don't have the score and the effects aren't quite finished. It's like they did that and they got the cards back and it was so bad they said, let's just leave it.
Let's not sink any more money into it.
Just about. It has composite shots. I've seen better composite shots in Hitchcock films from the 50s. With, like, you know, driving with, you know, the scenery behind you and stuff. Yeah. There are scenes in it that are hilariously bad.
That screen is still green.
Almost. And I was thinking about Phantom Menace and some of the prequels on this, because these actors, and it's almost maybe hard to diss the actors because it's obvious they're not working with anything. They could be on a completely blue stage with, I don't even know if their costumes are real. I mean, it looks so fake. But I got through it.
That's something.
You have scenes with Jeffrey Rush on a space chariot battling some gigantic cloud monster screaming things like "Back to the Shadows." Never a good idea to recall a much better film when you're watching a bad movie. It's not as glum and ponderous as something like Jupiter Ascending. Like, it does have a certain light-spirited to it. Nicole, what's the guy from Game of Thrones?
Oh,
Nikolai Coster-Waldau.
Yeah.
He's having, as Horace.
Jamie Lannister.
Right. He's doing the best he can and trying at least have fun with his performance a little bit. But no, I can't recommend it. And it doesn't sound like you guys would be watching this anytime in your lives.
I will never watch this.
There's not a lot of movies that after one trailer I'm automatically out. That was one of them.
Okay, that's Gods of Egypt, and we'll dismiss that into the junk bin of history.
Speaking of junk bin of history, I've been going through the original Star Trek, and I just recently...
The TV show.
The TV show. And I just recently completed Season 2, and I gotta say that 2 of the final episodes in Season 2 were some of the worst, and I mean, they're very kitschy and of its time, the series for a lot, but the 2 were just awful. One was Omega Glory, I think it was called, and it's the kind of episode where it resolves and you're thinking, did I miss something? I must have missed something, and you look up a review online and you're like, nope, didn't miss a thing. It was just that bad, and it just centers around the Enterprise finding this parallel planet to Earth, and that the white people are actually more of like the Neanderthal invaders, but there's an Asian culture there, and they're very sophisticated, and it just goes through, and then at the end of the episode, it's very patriotic, where you find out that this world has developed so parallel to Earth that they actually had the same independence documents, and that these people had just misinterpreted it, and the episode ends with James Kirk saluting the American flag on this old planet, and I'm just like, what the fuck did I just watch? And I'm like, call falling asleep and missing something. Did they time travel? And no, it's just a bad episode. And
obviously, it sounds like they're shooting for something, though.
Yeah, they must. Yeah, it just seemed really out of place.
Knowing the rest of the series, yeah, he had an idea there of something he wanted to tackle.
Yeah, it was an interesting watch, and just, widely regarded if not the worst, one of the worst episodes of the original series. And I can see why. Like, there's some likability about probably the first 75% of the episode it's interesting, but then towards the end you
realize it's going nowhere.
Yeah, it goes off the rails pretty quick. And then the final episode of Season 2, I think it's called Mission Earth, and it's basically the setup for what they intended to be a spin-off, not even really a true spin-off of Star Trek, but they just tried to shoehorn in the launching of this weird sci-fi show that it just seemed really odd that they encountered these people that were trying to write the histories of man without intruding too much. Like, it almost reminded me of Voyagers. Exactly. Oh, okay. But yeah, very much of its time, and it's the kind of episode where I watched it late last night and I was starting to doze and I didn't even care. I wasn't going to rewind it. I was just like, I just want to get to the end of this, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't
they're
care.
not all gold.
No. I mean, I would say 80 to 90% of the original series has been really enjoyable, and whatever, they can't all be hits.
No, for sure.
But just to kind of piggyback on your kind of awful and put it in the annals of history, maybe more annals of history, but...
You recommend the original Star Trek?
Oh yeah,
check out.
It's
for sure.
Great. I'm loving going through it from the beginning. And I've had people say, "Well, why don't you do it chronologically as far as the way the stories have been told, and start out with Star Trek Enterprise?" And I just kind of, I don't know, my brain doesn't work that way. I want to see the show develop as it goes, because I know there's going to be references to things in that show that they're going to assume while you're watching this as a Star Trek fan, and I want to get the inside jokes, right? That they're going to assume that you know.
Yeah, and something's play better after the fact. If you were to rewatch them, maybe watch Enterprise and then the original series. But if you're watching for the first time, watch the original series first and then the subsequent series as they were made.
Yeah,
I think it's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah,
that's a lot of TV.
It is.
It is.
We'll talk to you when you've wrapped it all up in 2020,
if I'm alive.
Right. Okay, I'll start with something called the Katering Show. You've heard of it?
Fucking love it. Both seasons.
Okay, I can already see Darren is dubious with this. You're not interested in a cooking show with two women from Australia?
The premise you were telling me so far does not sound like something I would watch.
Episodes are 8 minutes long.
You can meet Kate McCartney and Kate McLennan. They're two of the most inept hosts you'll ever find. You see, they don't really cook as much as bitch and whine about their personal problems and food allergies and general contempt for just about everything. These two girls are just the funniest people I've seen in a long time. Mm-hmm. It reminded me of when I was one of the first people to discover The Office, the British Office. And I was like telling people about it, and I'm trying to describe it, and just like, well, it's weird. It's like nothing you've really seen before, and it's really dark and sunny. It's great. They started with, I think, 6 episodes. You can find them all on YouTube. They've just released the season 2. I just can't recommend it enough. They're like 8-minute episodes.
I've actually watched it 3 or 4 times.
Right.
The Katering Show.
The Katering Show with the 2 Kates.
With a K, because there's 2 Kates.
Right.
Okay.
And it hooks you, like, once you realize what the original...
Within 40 seconds, you'll be like, am I on board for... Oh, yeah, this is...
Now,
I'm
is it
laughing
real?
already.
Is it fictional?
These are... I think they tried to be actresses and comedians in Australia to middling effect, and they've got together and they met and did this, and nobody's tried this before. You will not learn how to cook. No. You will not learn anything about cooking or food.
No.
They make drinks a lot and get drunk.
Booze reviews.
Right. But it's just so damn smart and well written.
And the humor is... They play off each other so well. Like, there's a lot of...
Season 2?
Yeah. And I was worried that they wouldn't be able to...
Did you get to the lasagna episode?
Yeah.
Okay. This, from what I hear I've heard some interviews with them. I discovered these girls through another podcast, and they were guests on it.
Oh, I'd like to see that.
And that was real. in the lasagna episode, that was really her placenta.
Oh, God. Really?
They make a placenta lasagna in the show. And she had just had her child, and she had really froze it and saved it for the show.
Oh, God, I just assumed they doctored something else. Oh, God.
Watch it again knowing that. And you can see how really disgusted they really are by it. Like, that's just one episode.
I'm really looking forward to watching this.
The hook of it, like they say, it's a foodie is trying to like create a cooking show with somebody that's got all these food intolerances.
Right. Yeah, I can't remember which Kate it is.
Yeah.
McLennan, I think.
Yeah.
The dark-haired one.
But, oh, man, it's...
Right. Yeah, she can't eat anything. They'll say, we're going to make this with 19 ingredients today, and she can have 2. And so they try to make the same dish with the 2 ingredients that she can eat because she's so food intolerant. And you just have to see it. It's hilarious. I can't recommend it enough. I've laughed more at an 8-minute episode of this than all of these so-called feature comedies that I've seen lately. These
the one where they give up sugar is gold.
Fantastic.
Oh, my God. When we had people in for the wedding in April, one of my wife's friends had heard of it, and we were all just kind of sitting around, didn't know what to watch. And our Blu-ray player has YouTube on it, so we're like, oh, well, okay, we'll throw this up, see what's going on. You've never, on such a new show, you've never seen 10 adults captivated more and just hysterically laughing.
Excellent.
Like, amazing. Like, we couldn't wait for season 2.
I'm excited, man. All
right. That's the Katering Show with the 2 Kates. You can see it on YouTube. Yeah. Just punch it up.
Fuck Luke Cage, I'm watching.
It's more entertaining.
Yeah.
It's as comedy goes, it's one of the funnier things I've seen in recent years.
I wholeheartedly agree.
All right. Anybody else got something cool to talk about?
My cool thing, once again, I brought it for demonstration. Speaking of Elmer Bernstein, old scores, the masterpiece, The Ten Commandments, from the great from the good 1956 Cecil B. DeMille film. It's
still great in its own way.
It's great in a way. Charlton Heston's a bit over the top.
The whole movie's
it's no
a
Ben-Hur.
little over the top.
It's no Ben-Hur.
Right.
Let's put it that way for biblical epics of the time. But not talking about the movie. I am talking about this great 6 CD box set. It couldn't get
only 6 CDs for the one movie.
Only 6. It couldn't get any better unless it was autographed by God.
Moses himself.
Moses himself has approved of this release. It's the full original score plus a ton of bonus tracks. Cover 3 CDs. Includes like a 12.5-minute track of Elmer Bernstein demoing his themes at the piano for Cecil B. DeMille. It's a great find that was still on the master tapes. And then 3 more CDs covering the 3 LP releases that came out over the years in the 50s and 60s. One of which, everything is contained on the first 3 discs, so this is 1 disc too many. But the other 2 LP recordings were unique recordings made specifically for the LP market, and so it's just a monumental release of one of the greatest film scores of all time. As always, links will be on our Facebook page or website.
It's amazing they can still unearth all this stuff after so many years.
Yeah, I mean, the cooperation of Paramount in getting this released and various other rights holders for the LPs is just... It's great that this release was years in the making. They just were very meticulous, made sure they had everything and the best possible sound, and they really put their hard work into it, and it shows. $70 US, not bad for what you get. And if you're a film score nerd, as I am, of course, or just a fan of old movies, it's a fantastic release. Highly recommend it.
And for you, every time you buy something like this, is it kind of in the hope that every penny that I put into this means that there's another film that maybe one day that they're going to do the same treatment to?
Exactly. I mean, these small record companies that do specialize in these restored soundtracks, you can't do this just out of love of the material. There has to be a profit, or there's not going to be more. Right. So yeah, they're obviously very dedicated fans themselves, and they want to make sure these are all done right and all these great treasures are unearthed, but they also need to make money or a few more monies.
Make a money.
So there are other people out there like you.
Yeah, there's a few thousand of us around the globe that support projects like this, and then money is poured into the next great release. So yeah, if only there were more people.
If you could pick a film that you would love to see given treatment like this.
Oh, I'd have great... Number of holy grails would come to mind. This is a DeMille release. I'll say Victor Young's score for Samson and Delilah is one of the greats.
Really?
From the 1940s, but I said the master tapes are lost on that. Every now and again something turns up that is thought to be lost. So, there's a number of great scores from some of my favorite composers that have had decent releases. In the modern era, almost every movie gets a soundtrack release, but that's usually an hour of music, which is generous. But take something like a Harry Potter movie or the Star Wars prequels, in which sometimes 2.5 hours of music is written for the film. I'd like to see all those released in glorious, complete, restored fashion.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of composers, did you get a chance to watch the AFI show yet?
I did.
John Williams. What did you think?
It was good. There was... all the interesting anecdotes were things that I've read a dozen times before in my many, many years of reading about film music. But
I'd never heard that story about Spielberg, though. Schindler's List, I thought that joke was awesome.
Wow, yeah.
That was just when I thought it was going to be so serious.
Yeah.
It's like terrific.
Yeah, John says that at almost every concert when he talks to the audience before doing the Schindler's List theme, he'll relate that anecdote. But so yeah, I've heard it a number of times. But yeah, it's a great story.
The anecdote, Paul?
No.
Basically, yeah. You want to tell it?
So John Williams, after first screening the film, went for a walk around Spielberg's bungalow a few times in the Universal lot and came back in and said, I'm really thinking about this, and I don't know if I'm up to it. I think you need a better composer for this movie. And Spielberg said, I know, but they're all dead. And also the great... and I can't even remember now if it was... I think it was Hugo Friedhofer who said it, and then another great story that was related. Hitchcock's Lifeboat, of course, takes place almost entirely on a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean. And I think the studio probably assigned, if it was Hugo Friedhofer, the composer to the film, and Hitchcock was, I think, objecting and saying, this is in the middle of the ocean. They're in the middle of the ocean. Where's the music coming from? To which Friedhofer said, the same place your camera is coming from. In other words, it's not a bad argument for why there are artificial things like scores in movies. But anyways, yeah, it was a good show, the AFI. It was nice to hear some good praise from people you wouldn't have expected.
Seth MacFarlane had something great to say.
And Seth MacFarlane is kind of well known in the film music community. He's a film music buff. Like he's really into film scores, and he's performed. I'm sure you guys know he's in kind of a big band group and
kind of a crooner.
Yeah. And he's performed with a number of orchestras, and when he says genuine things, I mean, when you watch a show like The Family Guy, and a lot of their references to film music, you can tell there's someone involved in the show who's a fan of film music, and Seth MacFarlane is. It's nice to hear him say these great things about John
I'm sure
Williams.
You would agree with his one comment when he said...
I can't remember.
He said, when anybody ever asks me, who do you think is the most talented person working in Hollywood in any category? He says it's not even close. It's, there's only one answer, and that's John Williams. He's so far ahead of all of his other peers in that category compared to everybody else.
Yeah,
really,
it's hard to argue with that.
Right.
Because even with directors, sure, there might not be a great number of amazing directors, but just the fact that there's more than one.
Yeah, I mean, Spielberg still has movies like Hook and The Terminal under his belt. And John Williams wrote brilliant scores for both of those kind of awful movies. So, I mean,
But I think if you were to ask anybody who's your favorite director, you get a dozen different answers. If you were to ask anybody who their favorite composer is, I think it's 9 out of 10 John Williams and maybe Morricone.
Depending on the age of the people you're asking, I think anyone under the age of 30 is going to say
Hans Zimmer.
They're going to. I don't want them to.
Do you really think they have that same love that they're going to grow up humming his music like we did growing up with John Williams?
Well, they're not growing up with Star Wars and E.T. Spielberg right now is, of course, making Lincoln and the BFG,
right.
So they're growing up with Transformers and Jerry Bruckheimer movies, and so that's what they see movies scored by Hans Zimmer or other composers giving us the Hans Zimmer sound.
But there's no melodies. There's nothing to cling to. There's nothing to.
They're not hummable. They're not memorable.
Right. That's what I mean.
But that's what a younger generation of audiences.
So, but would they even care though? Why would they even care about the music if it's not having that?
Because they see his name on 20 movies a year. They see 20 movies released every year scored by Hans Zimmer. And so they know that's Hollywood's composer. It's sad and it's unfortunate, but I think it's the truth.
And clearly he's good if he's been on that many.
He's
right?
talented. He's got a lot of talent.
I'm just saying, like, somebody that may not know any better, they're just going to assume it's a recognizable name.
Yeah.
To get back to something you mentioned much earlier was the little video analysis that they did about the Marvel music, the Marvel cinematic music. You've seen that, obviously.
I just read a little bit of the article.
You guys should really see it. I think it's Nerd Writer. He does a lot of good video pieces, and he did one on the Marvel music. No, maybe it was the Every Frame of Painting. But he went to Vancouver and talked to people, and he said hum a theme from a Marvel movie, and of course nobody could. And then
send us a link.
Right, and then hum some John Williams. And I mean, they were talking to young kids today, and they still could hum all the John Williams stuff.
That's good. That makes me happy.
Absolutely.
There's hope for the universe.
Because as much schlock as there is in the theater, you still have parents like us that would sit your kid down and say, okay, yeah, you might like Transformers, but here's Star Wars, here's E.T.
Yeah.
Right, here's what real movie music is.
Right, there's that little bit of an info.
Like I say, and listeners to this podcast will learn, I'm a big film music nerd, and I probably have 1,500 film scores on CD, and I probably have less than 10 Hans Zimmer scores on CD. So that just goes to show, I mean...
As you were saying, with the output of his work, how much he has, right?
He can turn over a score in a couple of weeks and give modern filmmakers the sound they want, but it's not memorable, great stuff much of the time.
Just because they're prolific doesn't mean they're good.
Right.
Yeah,
I'll send you that link for sure.
Yeah,
because at least it's people are being aware of the fact just how boring music is in movies, especially these blockbusters, and how formatted it is, and how they stick to the temp music.
Yeah, you often can't blame the composer. I'll say that too. Is like you say, if they stray too far from the temp score, they're fired, right?
Yeah, and that video gets into that.
I mean, once again, Hans Zimmer. Christopher Nolan told Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard on, when they started the Dark Knight films, he said, I don't want any theme in this movie to be longer than 2 notes. You can't have a theme that's 2 notes long. That's why there's no memorable Batman theme.
Even Jaws is a few more notes than that, isn't it?
Well, it's...
Bump, bump. I mean,
sure, John Williams wrote a great 2-note theme.
2 notes,
John Williams can write a 2-note theme, but yeah, I mean, it's... Modern filmmakers, I don't know. I don't know if it's just not fashionable anymore. They see these thematically driven orchestral scores as old-fashioned or passé, and they want something that's more akin to electronica or dance music or rock and roll or whatever. But sometimes, I don't know, sometimes we get a good electronica score.
There was a time in the early 70s, though, when big orchestral arrangements and scores were out of date, and then Star Wars brought all of that back.
They went away.
In a big bad way.
They were always kind of there, but they became then. Well, a few things happened, like The Graduate and Shaft, which said, "Hey, you can have a great pop-driven score and have it make a lot of money," and then that's what everyone wanted in their film. And how many were as successful as The Graduate or Shaft? Not very many, but if there's money involved, then people think that that's the way to go.
Okay, movie music. Paul, do you have any cool things to talk about?
Actually, I watched a little bit of a disaster flick on Netflix called The Wave. It's out of Denmark. It actually wasn't even on my radar until a couple friends were talking about it on Facebook, and it kind of piqued my interest. And we were just looking for kind of a check your brain at the door kind of movie, which this didn't end up being quite that, but it was engaging nonetheless. So it's out of Denmark, and right out of the gate, it's got a very similar feel and atmosphere, kind of like Troll Hunter. So that had me right away, because I really enjoyed Troll Hunter. And we tried to watch it with English dubbing at the beginning, and it just took us completely out of it, so we switched to subtitles, and man, am I glad we did. And, I mean, you can tell it's low budget, but they're smart with the way that they use their budget for the special effects. And it's basically, the premise is you've got this very isolated town in Norway, and it's centered mainly around this one family, and this scientist who's pretty much a leader in his field notices that things aren't right, and that it's a mountainous town. They're very, like I said, they're very isolated, and the feeling, the performances, the pacing of the movie, like, it doesn't overstay its welcome. You actually kind of care for all the characters, and all the decisions they make seem realistic. And it's a disaster movie, but it has a little more realism and grit to it. Like, you could actually see this happening. It's not like those disaster movies where you just got to be with John Cusack and you're fine. This is not
Roland Emmerich.
No, it's really good, and I was really pleasantly surprised with the movie that I honestly hadn't even really heard of, and checked it out, and man, am I glad we did. It was really enjoyable.
I love a good disaster movie.
Yeah,
yeah,
have to
for sure.
That up.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's The Wave?
The Wave, yeah.
And that's streaming on Netflix.
It sure is.
Excellent. I'll be checking that out for sure. Okay, should we wrap up the roundup?
Let's wrap up the roundup.
Catch you guys later.
Signing off.
See you on the flip side.